Okay. We're going to start this off with an
Karate
awesome
chop?
cold opening like Brad and I usually do. So I'm going to share my screen because this is, yeah, I'll just share my screen. We'll just leave it at that. And here we go. I hope you enjoy it, Brad.
Alan, this thing. What?
Oh my god.
My sister.
I apologize to everybody who is watching this show. If anybody doesn't know, that is a scene from Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls.
My sister sent me that, and I wasn't sure what to say, so I was like, I feel like everybody's seen both of those movies, but I never thought about putting those two together. But so, with that said, is there any cold opening you'd like to talk about? Is there anything irrelevant that we could
I want
start
to
off
start. I want to start the show completely over. So I want to do.
Okay.
Well, I think what we can transition into is you fell off the wagon today for having good cold openings, and so today we're talking about this concept that we hear from clients all the time of falling off the wagon, so to speak. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today and what exactly that means, and maybe give some perspective about why that's maybe not the right way to think about it.
Yep. I think we see this. I mean, we do. We see it all the time, like in our group of people saying, I fell off the wagon. What do I do about it? How do I get back on track? And maybe we could just actually just say, so here's the solution, and then we can probably just end the show. And that is just don't ever get on the wagon.
Yes. That's my best advice. You cannot fall off a wagon you have not gotten on.
So let's talk about, first of all, what do we mean by, this probably doesn't need a huge, I think most people know what that means, but I think if you say I fell off the wagon, generally what we're talking about is I was dieting for a while. I screwed up. And whether that looks like I had a bad weekend or I ate too much last night, completely blew my calories out of the water, or it could even mean I stopped working out, like just I fell off the wagon. I'm having a tough time getting back into it. That's essentially what people mean. They were in a routine. They're not in that routine anymore, and they're having a tough time getting into it. And so the thing that always comes to mind for me when I see or hear that, I think I want to hear your perspective on this because there was a post I wrote, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago, and it was basically like, if you say I fell off the wagon, in a sense you're sort of this may sound harsh, I don't mean it that way, but like it kind of feels like you're deflecting the blame because you're basically saying that someone else is driving and I just happen to fall off. But it's nobody else's fault but your own, right? So you're not really, when you say I fell off the wagon, it's like that sounds like an accident. So what you really did is you basically chose to jump off, right? So I think the way my mind works is, well, first of all, let's take personal responsibility and say, hey, I I stopped doing what I was doing. It's no one else's fault but my own. So I didn't fall off the wagon because that implies it's not my fault. I just chose to get off. So why did that happen? Right? So that's kind of where my first thought goes. And then from there I try to think of, okay, why did I stop doing what I was doing? And try to identify that first. But what's your take on that? I mean, I know it's just a turn of phrase, so I don't like it doesn't it's not to be
Yeah,
meant to be taken literally, but I do try to see it that way.
yeah, it's more of an idiom than it is really
Right.
trying to blame an inanimate object for you falling off of it. I think let's just make sure that's fairly clear. But
Sure.
what I think it really what I think it does is it's a concept that helps people demarcate different versions of themselves. And so you have a lot of times people think they are either on a plan or off a plan. And when they will engage in behaviors for a certain period of time, they consider themselves, quote unquote, on the wagon or on plan. And when they engage in a certain set of behaviors or habits for a certain period of time, they may consider themselves off plan or off the wagon. And so what this really comes down to is a little bit of this concept of you view things in a binary way, or you view things with an identity perspective, right? You're like, I am X person who is doing Y. And that's what the language and the concepts around like, hey, I fell off the wagon really mean. And so when you dig deeper kind of underneath the surface of that, it basically allows you to have a perspective of you have binary modes in your life. And that's really not what I feel is the most helpful for clients. And so one of the things I was actually I'm working on a fairly big project of my own, and I was working on some of the content for it, and I was writing sort of about this topic, and it's really related to one of the most helpful things that we do with our clients is we help them understand that the behaviors you engage in are on a spectrum and not binary, right? If you think about your goal is to lose body weight, improve your body composition, get in better shape, it's never a binary thing. You're neither either on plan or off plan, so to speak. You're always in some way on plan and off plan, right? And it's more of, are the decisions you're making moving you closer towards where you want to be or further away? And so I think about it like, if you look at your progress from where you are today to like your end goal, you're always making steps toward it or away from it, right? And sometimes you'll have days or weeks where you make a whole bunch of progress toward it. And sometimes you'll have days or weeks where you either don't make any progress at all or you take a few steps back, right? Think about this like financially. Like, let's say your goal is to save $1 million. And the way you set up your life and the behaviors and whatever, you save $1,000 a month, right? Well, after 12 months, you've saved $12,000. Let's say you have a month where the dishwasher breaks and the washing machine breaks and your kid has an emergency dental thing because he chipped a tooth or whatever, and that was outside of what you expected, and so you end up having to spend $2,000 in extra dollars, and so you're back to $10,000. It's not necessarily that you no longer value reaching this goal and you're not continuing to work toward it and you're not off plan. You just, things happen and you made decisions that moved you backwards. And so now if we take this into the kind of health fitness piece, your concept earlier of having a little more agency over it is where things start to really be important, right? Unlike some of the just whims of life and financials and stuff like that, like you have a little bit more control over what you're doing, right? Sure, there's going to be weeks where work's crazy and you can't get to the gym as much, but you can still make the same choices with your food, right? There may be weeks where you have to go out to a whole bunch of like work lunches or something, but you can still control your, like how much you walk and how much you get to the gym or the decisions that you make while you're at those restaurants. And so it's really this, the concept of like falling on or off the wagon, I think really becomes a little bit to what you said earlier, a little bit of a crutch of it kind of helps you go say, okay, I did one bad thing. I'm just going to continue to do 7 or 8 more things.
Right.
Instead, it's like, okay, how do I look at my decisions cumulatively over days, weeks, months, and years? And am I making the decisions that align with where I want to go, or am I not?
Yeah. So what do we think? This is probably the next place to go is, so what causes these things? I think when I when I think about if it was a bad day, a bad evening, whatever, like trying to identify why did that happen? What led to it? What were the triggers? What was my thought process? What did my environment look like? There are probably a handful of most common causes. I think one of the big ones is this idea that people need to be perfect, that people need to if you don't track everything, it wasn't like all your efforts weren't worth it. If you could be going through, you start your morning, you have breakfast, you tracked it, you tracked lunch, your lunch was prepped, you didn't snack at work, you got home, you tracked your dinner, and then your neighbor comes over, you guys hang out, they bring some food, you indulge, you didn't track it, and you ate a little bit more than you had planned. Then that really does kind of piss people off. Like it upsets them, and they get guilty about it. They feel like they just ruined their entire day, and they really let it get to them, right? And that's that all or nothing mindset that we talk about, where it's like, okay, something unplanned happened, so I guess I just need to start over tomorrow. Then tomorrow comes, and the same thing happens because I don't know. Let's say tomorrow your spouse brings home a pizza, and you have a slice of pizza because it smells so good, or right. And these things compound, and you eventually get into this mindset of, man, what's the point, right? I can't do this, right? And it's like you get this idea that I can't do this when really, if you look at it, you're like 80 to 85% doing the right things. It's that 15 to 20% that you do these other things. That's better than not doing anything at all, right? So it's not this, it doesn't need to be, I need to be 100% perfect or this isn't worth it. So shifting away from that mindset and just understanding, hey, look, my days aren't going to be perfect, but it's better than it was before. And now I can look back at whatever happened during that day and I can say, okay, here's what I did. Here's where I think I could have done better. And here's like what I'm going to do tomorrow going forward to make sure that that doesn't happen again. It's not perfection. It's just building, and it's just stacking those wins and compounding that momentum and changing things over time so that eventually you go from about 80% doing well to maybe you're at 90%, and then you get to 95, and nothing's ever going to be perfect. That's really not the name of the game. It's just doing better than you've been doing. So that's kind of where I think a lot of this comes from, is just this mindset of I got to be perfect, and if I'm not perfect, it's all for nothing.
Yeah, and I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. I think there's a little more nuance, and there's kind of a few things to unpack here. I think one, this is where there's power and danger in having a strong identity, right? One of the benefits of having like an identity of who you are is you've accumulated a lot of evidence that you are a certain way, and that helps you kind of grease the grooves of making decisions. Now, that can be a good thing, right? If you're like, hey, I am the healthy person who eats well and works out, even when life gets really crazy, like that's who you are, so that's what you're going to default to. The problem with that is when you make a decision that's antithetical to your identity, you start to be like, oh, that's not who I actually am, right? So if you're building this identity of, hey, I'm a healthy person who works out and eats well, and then you make a decision that's opposite of that, it starts to kind of pick at this armor that you're wearing of this is my identity, right? So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. The other piece is we have, as humans, at least myself, I'll just put this on myself. We have this tendency to catastrophize decisions we make, right? So people will often think, I did this thing, it ruined everything, right? We live our life this way. We like, oh, I took the wrong job, it ruined my life. Oh, I made this investment, it ruined my life. Oh, I married the wrong person, it ruined my life. Oh, like this is a little bit of the default pattern that we have. With very, 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 very rare exception, in the health fitness journey, there's almost no single decision you can make that will ruin your progress. So like, let's say you have weeks of doing a really good job, and you have one day where you make a bad decision at breakfast, a bad decision at lunch, and a bad decision at dinner, and you decide to not go to the gym. Like you really haven't undone much. Like worst case scenario, you maybe set yourself back a couple days, 2 days, 3 days in this 6, 12, 24 months, 10-year like cycle or process you're on. And so I think a lot of times we take this idea of catastrophizing decisions, and we would just like allow that to be the case in a situation in which if you ate that 800 calorie cookie for dessert, not ideal, also not the end of the world. Like you're on
What?
a I need to get a net 100,000 calorie deficit, like 800, not that big of a deal. I can probably go just make up for that over the next 6 weeks. Like really not
Yeah.
that big of a deal.
So why do you think we're so hard on ourselves when it comes to like? Because I agree with you. Like I do think if I were to look at, let's take your example that you just mentioned. If you were like really down on yourself about that, I would look at it from an outsider's perspective and be like, whatever, it's no big deal. Like oftentimes, I think the things that we are hard on ourselves about are things that other people would look at and be like, that's not so bad. So, but why do we take it out? So, why do you think we're like that? I'm not saying everyone's like that, but I mean, there is that tendency to just, I don't know where that comes from.
I mean, we'd have to probably talk to an evolutionary psychologist to get down to the depths of it, but like, just think about how you process things yourself. Like, for an example, here's how I would think about work, right? We're doing some new marketing thing at Macros Inc. I make a bad decision, sales dry up, the company goes under, I don't have any income, I have to sell my house, I'm homeless, I die, and everybody makes fun of me. Like, that's how I process like making decisions about marketing, right? Now, if somebody else were to tell me that, I'm like, dude, that's the like dumbest thing I've ever heard. Okay. You'd have to make 3 years of really bad marketing decisions. You'd have to do some pretty bad financial stuff. Then let's say the business closes. Let's just say you go find a different job to do something else for a while. Maybe you just downsize your house and like you can still put food on the table. Like you're going to be okay. Right. But like we're just wired to go to the nth degree because that's just, I think part of it's a survival mechanism of like, hey, if I plan for the worst in my head, it's not gonna happen, so I'll survive. I think that's probably a little bit of it, but I'm not an evolutionary psychologist, so take everything I say about psychology with a giant grain of salt.
The other thing that gets people into trouble, and I think why people quote unquote fall off the wagon, is not having the right expectations. Like let's just say that, because it if you don't lose, or if you compare yourself to someone else, so and so lost 5 pounds their first week. I haven't lost anything. I'm upset and like, so screw it. I just don't want to, I don't want, like, what's the point? That's another thing, is just having the right expectations is so big. If we have the wrong expectations, if we expect more than is actually realistic, that gets us into trouble as well. I think there are more reasons than this for falling off the wagon, but I think those two, the I have to be perfect mindset, and just set the right expectations for yourself.
So
to me, if I have unrealistic expectations and I don't meet them, what happens? I feel pretty crummy about it. If I feel pretty crummy about it, my behaviors reflect that. And typically those behaviors are not the types of behaviors that are conducive to your goal.
Yeah, this is interesting. I've been thinking a lot about this over the last 4 to 6 months, and I don't know if I'm right or if I'm wrong. And I really want to like figure out a way to do some market research to figure it out. I actually think that the average person in consumer is much smarter than we assume. And
in what?
And we on the business side often make assumptions that aren't true. For example, I don't think most people actually have the expectation of I can lose 10 years worth of weight gain in 3 months. Like, I don't think people actually believe that. I think what actually happens is when they kind of start the process of like, oh, hey, here's what I want to do, they don't want to acknowledge the reality. Like, I think they know what it's actually going to take, but it's really difficult and uncomfortable, and they don't want to like really process it. So I think when we say people have unrealistic expectations, I think it's actually less of people have unrealistic expectations and more of they don't want to confront the harder reality of what's true. And I think those are very different. Because one, you're saying somebody is ignorant from the perspective of they don't know, so they have unrealistic expectations, versus there's an uncomfortable truth that everybody kind of knows, but it's easier to sell them something that kind of just assuages that uncomfortableness. That's kind of what I'm starting to feel.
But in a world of pictures of these transformations and all these
Yeah, but I don't think people actually believe that, though. Like, I just don't think they do.
Well, I think people see other people's progress and think, I'll never achieve that. So but with that mindset, that it's like you are setting that sort of expectation that what I'm seeing is not realistic for me, and so like why even try it? Like that's just, you know what I'm saying? Like it definitely can influence your perception.
Yeah, but like I said, I may be wrong. I probably am wrong. But I just don't.
Think what you're saying is
I don't know if that's true either, because then why would all the 90-day shreds continue to sell millions of dollars a year? Like, because people think they can become that. Yeah, but what I'm saying is there's a reality underneath it. That's what's actually happening.
You're saying people don't believe in the extremes. I agree with you if that's what you're saying. Like people don't actually think like, okay, can I lose 50 pounds in a month? Like people, no, yeah, I don't think people would believe that. But something a little more depends on how realistic it is. And I guess that begs the question: what's objectively realistic and what isn't? But I think what you're kind of saying is a lot of these examples that you would like, people know what is like on the extreme end versus not, and they wouldn't believe those types of things. But I think maybe this is what you're saying though too, is that is different than if I see a before and after picture of somebody in our group, let's say, and I think, okay, that maybe that's not an extreme example. Maybe that is more achievable. Like I just think there are varying degrees of believability, and based on that, then you set your expectations accordingly. But I think one of the things that people, I just think it's the comparison thing. When we compare ourselves to others, and we set up an expectation that is not realistic for myself, that is based on someone else's progress because I compared myself to that person, you set yourself up for potential disappointment. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, it's the whole comparison is the thief of joy thing.
So I kind of want to talk about that too. And after we get to this, I do want to get to this comic. So somebody made a really good comment that's a little bit tied to what we're talking about. I actually think when most people do the comparison thing and they look at somebody else, I think they're more comparing. They know that they are capable of doing what somebody else did, but they're not doing it. And so I think that's where people, like, when I look at somebody like, let's just say, like, let's take a business example, like Jeff Bezos, right? When I compare myself to that seems unrealistic, right? But when I compare myself to that and I go, oh, I'm actually comparing myself to, I could have done things differently in myself to be closer to that example. And so I think a lot of times when people talk about the comparing thing, I think it's more of we're comparing the version of ourselves we could have become if we had done differently than we are comparing ourselves directly to that person. And I think that's a big part of it, right? So we talk about like falling off the wagon. I think a lot of times what happens is people will make decisions or habits or engage in habits about things that are off plan. And then they'll start to compare themselves to be like, oh, I could have been this person if I had done this, but I didn't. So now I'm this person. And so that's when they get this idea of like, I'm not on the wagon because of that. But let's talk about, do you want to just grab Tanya's comics? I think, or Latanya's comics. I think there's some very deep psychology in here that we can talk about.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks, first of all, Latanya, for commenting. Anyone else, feel free to jump in as we're going through this episode. We love answering questions, so thank you for this. This says, personally, my frustration and why it seems a catastrophe is that the one cookie moves the scale fast, where multiple days of doing well makes much smaller increments of improvement. And that's a common frustration. I think that's something that we've Well, we've kind of talked about what do you want to dive into first, Brad? Do you want to talk about why that happens, or I mean, obviously, whatever you have in mind that you want to address. But I do think that's a very common thing people experience.
So this is one of the most deeply rooted psychological aspects of human nature, and it's called loss aversion. We actually kind of really discovered this and flushed this concept out in like behavioral economics, and it really came out of like people betting money, and like we get more pain from losing a dollar than we do like a dopamine hit / joy from winning $10. And so like that's just how our brains are wired as humans. Loss is way worse to us than winning is good. Like I know for me, when I go to the casino, like every once in a while, like I don't know, like once a year, we'll go for like New Year's, or when Jay's in town, we'll go to the casino. Like if I were to win $1,000, that would bring me less joy than the pain of losing like $20. Like I just hate losing money. It's so bad. Um, and it's kind of the same thing when we talk about like the scale, right? Or our progress. Like you wake up one day and you just look shredded in the mirror because like all the conditions are right, because you like drank the perfect amount of water yesterday and had the perfect amount of salt, and you had a carbohydrate feed, and you're a little tan because you just got back from vacation, so you're not stressed. And then like 2 days later, you ate a bunch of popcorn, so you had way too much salt, and you didn't drink enough water, and you were kind of stressed at work, so like you look different. Like that day of pain of looking in the mirror and seeing like a decline from your peak is way worse to us psychologically than the benefit of waking up that day looking amazing. And the more that we can just like be objective about that and just be like, look, my brain's dumb, this is what it does, I just know I'm going to feel this way, I think that really helps. Like just knowing that your default response that you don't have control over is just going to be that way just kind of helps you be like, oh yeah, when the scale, if I eat a cookie and it's got salt and carbohydrates and I end up holding a little more water, so it goes up half a pound tomorrow, like just know that that's just the way your brain's going to respond. But it's not real, it's not true. Like it just, that's just the default of what it is.
So that's a really interesting topic that we should. I mean, it would be cool to do a topic like that sometime and get like a psychologist on that could explain it. But since we don't have that,
Let me
because I was
guess.
curious, like,
Friendly chat
yeah,
GPT.
I did.
Do not read this in Old
so
English or I will kick you off of the live show.
it won't be, but this is actually interesting. Loss aversion is deeply ingrained in us because of evolutionary survival pressures. Our ancestors who overreacted to potential losses were more likely to survive than those who were too focused on potential gains. Here's the core idea: losing something could mean death. Gaining something was nice, but not as urgent or life threatening. In evolutionary terms, if you miss out on a gain, you might be a little hungrier. But if you lose your only food supply or misjudge a threat, you're dead. This asymmetric survival pressure has literally wired our brains to prioritize avoiding pain, risk, and loss, even if the odds are small, over chasing rewards.
I mean, what's
That's
really
super
interesting about that is that actually goes even like another layer deeper, in that we are wired to see patterns where there are not patterns and make more type 2 errors, so like false positives than false negatives, right? Because of that, right? It's like, let's say you hear a rustling in the grass and you think it's a tiger and you go check on it and it's not a tiger. That's way better than you hearing a rustling in the grass. I mean, like it's just a rustling in the grass and getting eaten. And so like we've actually evolved these brain systems that default in weird ways because of things like that.
This is, that's also seeing how that correlates to other aspects of life is really interesting. Like people who stay at bad jobs that they hate out of, or like in a bad relationship out of fear of losing stability, like that's that at play. That's super interesting. um yeah, or like, I mean, I don't, like, I'm sure you're, you've got, you're bigger probably into investments than I am, but like I would imagine there are times where you've been hesitant to invest because, like, even if it looks like a strong opportunity, it's the fear of losing money, right? Like I'm assuming you struggle with that, but I mean, it's like that for everybody in some aspect of life. It's just very interesting concept there.
I think Warren Buffett's most famous saying is the best way to make money is to never lose money.
Well,
Right.
wouldn't that be nice if that could just like never happen?
But I mean, like, that's the thought process is 4% compounded for 100 years with no risk is much
Yeah,
better than X with risk, right? It's like it's just
right.
kind of the same philosophy. Like loss
Yeah.
aversion is deeply ingrained in us.
Before we move on, one thing I parked in my brain to come back to it later was you were talking about the before this it was I can't remember the exact comment you made, but the thought I had is, don't you wish, and this is like one of life's conundrums that just can't ever happen, but imagine where you would be. Oh, that's where you were talking about Jeff Bezos and comparing yourself to him, and if you had done XYZ, where would you be? Do you ever think about where you'd be now if you knew what you know now back then?
Yes, I mean that's everything, right?
Isn't that? But that's what I'm saying. Like, obviously, it doesn't work like that. But holy crap! Like, why? I wish I could just. I wish I knew then what I know now. It's just and think about where your life would be, and that goes into like
The thing
how
is,
much different would your life be?
I don't ever spend time thinking about that because the
Hmm.
reason I know what I know now is because I
It's
did the
because
things I did,
yep. But
right? I
that
mean,
is yeah.
it's sort of like, do you remember the movie Back to the Future 2?
I saw it a long time ago. I barely remember it, but I know obviously the concept.
Yeah, so the premise was uh the like antagonist ended up finding a sports almanac of like all of the results from the future,
Mm-hmm.
and he had this, and so he could just bet on all these sporting events and
Mm-hmm.
he knew the outcomes, and so he just made a bunch of money and ended up like owning all of, I think it's Hill Valley or whatever it was called. um but the thing in there is when you don't go through the lessons of learning it,
Right.
nothing good happens.
This is kind of why I say that in my life I don't really have regrets. There are things I wish I would have done differently, but I don't regret it because every mistake that I made has brought me to where I am now, and I like
I
where
don't
I'm at
know.
now
I'm
and the
pretty
things that I've learned.
sure you regret wearing cargo shorts to the company meeting.
No, I don't. You know why? Well, first of all, they weren't cargo shorts.
They were cargo shorts.
No, they weren't. They were like golf shorts. I still have them. I can go get them and show you what they were.
I
But
think we have
I,
pictures.
I don't regret that for two reasons. One, sorry, I bumped my computer. One, it's a great talking point, and two, every company meeting thereafter was like, I'm wearing dress pants. So
So funny. So funny. All right, next
So
topic.
well, so yeah, I think we need to spend kind of the rest of. We've talked about why it happens, the mindset behind it, but let's like. So how do we avoid it? Right? How do we avoid these things? And a lot of this is stuff that we've definitely talked about in past episodes, but I think I want to talk about, and the big one to me is environment. Like we know without a doubt that our environment shapes who we are, it shapes our behaviors, not entirely, but it has a big influence on how we behave, the habits that are ingrained in us, the thoughts that the things we believe, so many things. And so I think if we can construct our environment in a way that is more conducive to our goals, you set yourself up to for less risk of falling off the wagon, right? I think environment is so huge that to me modifying that would be step number one. And you can do that in a variety of ways. You can if you have snacks that you normally can't control yourself on, don't bring those into the house. If you're typically one to sit at night, is your boy coming in? Are you bringing? You're
Yes.
smiling like you just.
She just brought him in to say hi.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was gonna say I could just tell by the way you were smiling that it must have been a little one. But I think yeah. So there's that. There's if you are someone who sits at night and you're watching TV, or you're just, you're on your phone on the couch and you got a snack next to you, instead of sitting down and doing something mindless, go do something intentional, right? You've just modified your environment to, maybe it's, instead of sitting tonight, I'm gonna go clean up one of the rooms that I know needs to be cleaned. Just like things like that, simple modifications make a big difference in our environment and our habits. So I think starting there is a really good place to start. But what do you think? What would you add?
I think the first thing to do is just jettison the concept entirely. Just get rid of it.
Which would just the what concept? Just the idea of falling off the wagon?
Yeah, the idea of I'm on or off the wagon. Like just take the idea and throw it in the trash if you can. Because that's not real and it's not helpful. Right? I mean, I have this view of the world sometimes where there are things that I believe that are not real, but they're helpful. Now, if something is real and unhelpful, I won't use it. If it's not real and unhelpful, I definitely won't use it. So the concept of being on or off the wagon is not reality and it's not helpful. So just try to get rid of the concept entirely, get rid of the language, don't use it, and just like change your perspective. Now, the next layer to that is okay, how do we start building resilience and putting systems in place in your life to make sure that you don't compound bad decisions, which is basically what quote unquote falling off the wagon is. Like, right, you make one bad choice and you make the next bad choice and you kind of say, F it, I did this, and now it's all bad. There's a few ways that I have tried to do that in my own life. One is just get in the habit of don't miss twice. Like if you do one thing, don't let it compound to a second one. Because like a lot of times behaviors manifest and get sustained through momentum, right? It's like the first time you do something and then the second time and then the third. Like if you can stop it after the first time, that's the best way to do it. Now, obviously that's easier said than done. So kind of the ways to do that are one, obviously put yourself in an environment that increases the likelihood you're going to make a good choice, right? So if you are trying to make better food decisions, make sure the food in your house is the right food, right? Make sure you're eating at home as much as you can. Make sure you're reducing or eliminating or limiting the amount of alcohol that's available around whatever. Ask other people in your life to hold you accountable to the things that you say, right? Sometimes it can be uncomfortable, but if you like tell your spouse like, hey, I really need to make sure that I don't eat dessert every night after dinner this week. And if you notice I'm doing it more than like one, like if I do it 2 days in a row, you need to say something and I will be okay with taking the feedback. And so like putting in checks and balances in your life can be really helpful. The next piece is try to set up reward systems for yourselves for the good behaviors that you do. I know we talked about this when we talk about like habits and stuff, but like trying to find ways to give yourself some reward for doing the positive things, great. For example, this is just like a pet example. Let's say you really love your daily coffee, like you like going to Starbucks, whatever. Make a deal with yourself where you will only stop at Starbucks or whatever your local coffee stand is on your way home from the gym or on your way to the gym. Like stack the things together. And if you can do that, it really increases your likelihood of doing it. Like there will be times where you're like, oh, I don't really want to go to the gym, but man, I really want that coffee. Whatever, I'll just go to the gym. It's worth it because I can get the coffee. So it's like things like that really help. Yeah. So I would say those are kind of the top suggestions I have.
I kind of want to bring up I want to go in it's not I wouldn't say a different direction, but an angle that I don't know how often people think about this, or how many people realize it, but one of the things for me that I've realized in my life is you're not going to have the same goals or aspirations or cares that you once did as time goes on. For example, when I was 28, I wanted to be I wanted to be super lean. I wanted to be shredded. I wanted like big muscles. I wanted, and I'm 39 now, and I don't have those same goals. Like I still want to, I don't, I want to look good, but I don't need to feel like I'm shredded anymore. And I don't need to go spend as much time as I was back then in the gym trying to look that way. Like that's not my goal anymore. And so I think one of the things that people need to realize or should realize is that over time, even if you've ingrained these habits in yourself that have helped you get to your goal, it's okay if that isn't something you sustain forever, because as time goes by, you change as a person, your goals change, you're in a different phase of your life. My life looks much different now than it did 10 years ago. I have 4 kids now. Back then, I had 1 kid when I was 28. So it's like my life just looks way different.
Oh my
And it's
God.
okay that, if.
I just
Go ahead.
I just had like such a you had a kid when you were 28. I had my first kid and I was like 37. Oh my God.
That's all right. But you get my point. Like it's not, sometimes I think people will say like, man, I used to be so fit and this and that. But look at how you've evolved over time. Like your goals, the things that you care about change. The things that you value change. And it's okay. You're probably not gonna sustain anything forever. And so
Yeah.
what you have to do is you have to change your goals, and it's okay. Like, so don't get down on yourself if what you used to do easily is not something you could do easily anymore. Right? I can't work out, and I know you can. We've talked about this. You and I can't go play hours and hours of basketball or football like we used to in our 20s. It just doesn't. So those things change. And so I just wanted to make the point of, you're not really meant to do any single thing forever. So when you find yourself not being able to sustain something anymore, it's normal, and you don't have to get, upset about it. Just find a new goal. Things change. That would be kind of my point to people.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is there's something to be said about that though. It is totally normal to change what you value in your life and what your goals are and what you're chasing. Make sure that you're changing your goals because of what you actually value, not because there's a level of resistance that's uncomfortable.
Great. Yeah, it's a great point.
I think a lot of times we're like, oh, this is hard. I don't want this anymore. It's like, no, you just realize it's actually hard now. And so you have to find a way to get through it. Now, when your actual values change and you make a change, totally reasonable. But if it's like, hey, I really want to get abs, well, that's a dumb example, but I'm just going to use it. And you get like halfway there and it starts to get really hard and you're like, oh, actually, you know what? Like, I don't really value that much anymore. I just want to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, did your values actually change that quickly? Or is it now you're realizing, hey, this is where the hard work sets in? And that's a really tricky thing to balance. And I think you have to be pretty honest with yourself and find ways to get to the real answer. I mean, if you find like superficial goals change quickly, it's probably not a value thing. It's probably a resistance
right, for
thing,
sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It's a great point. And that's where again, I think I see people getting upset about, I can't do this, or this anymore like I used to. Sometimes it's like, well, are you meant to be doing that anymore? Are you supposed to be? Or should you be doing something else at this stage? You got to ask yourself that question too, whatever that question might be. Yeah. So, I think we've here. I'm going to read some. I'm going to read some examples here that are written down about how to include some of these changes that we've talked about in a balanced approach, and we can pull any of these out and chat further about it if you'd like. One of the I'll just start with the first suggestion is and we kind of alluded to this earlier, set minimum standards. 80% is better than 100% for 4 days and then a crash, right? So I was talking earlier about the all or nothing mindset. Just like doing what you need to do most of the time is better than not, is better than trying to be perfect for 4 days out of 7 and then the rest are just terrible. So just try to be consistent. The other thing is, or the next one says, focus on behavior goals, not just outcomes, which I think is important because you're not going to get to that outcome unless you're focusing on the behaviors now that are eventually going to lead there, right? So that's a big one. Practice flexibility. We know we've talked about this many times, but planning for meals out, vacations, etc. if you can. And if you can't, there are certain practices that you can utilize to like still kind of stay on track and estimate as best you can in those less than ideal circumstances. Use the 24-hour rule. Fell off, all good. Reset the next day, not next Monday, right? In other words, don't if you have a bad Thursday, don't say, okay, well, I guess I'll just start next Monday, and then Friday and Saturday and Sunday are terrible too, right? Get back on the next day, keep going. Build rituals, anchors like journaling, meal prep, walking. Track what matters: food, workouts, habits, not just your weight. And I think that's a big one that people fixate on is my weight on the scale. If you take care of the other things, your weight's going to take care of itself. Like the scale it'll just tell, like it'll be reflective of the behaviors and habits that you are working on, right? So track your food, your workouts, and your habits. Then your weight will take care of itself. I promise. And then accountability and coaching. Know when to ask for help. This is a really good one. We don't often use this show to like tout, hey, go sign up for coaching. But I actually think this is a good time to just to mention to people the value in having a coach. Imagine this show that we put on every week. Imagine having something like this every day. Like it's a powerful thing. You have that guidance. A coach can just take a look at everything that we're talking about, all of your daily habits, your week, the way your life is structured, and be able to say and take this view of here's this picture that I've got of you. Here's what I want you to change. Okay, cool. Then the next day we're going to work on this, and the next day we're going to work on this, and we're just going to stack these wins over time, so that in a month from now you're going to look back and be like, "Dang, I've look at all the progress I've made. I feel like a different person already. It's only been a month." So the accountability thing, the coaching thing, is so huge. I don't think it can be overstated, but those are some. I feel like those are pretty good examples for people that they can take away and start implementing right off the bat. I think you muted yourself accidentally. Can't hear you.
When we talk about being consistent, one of the things that's helped me, especially like when we talk about, I mean, this applies to the health fitness side, but also like the business side and kind of going after any longer term goals you have. The bad days are going to happen. Like if you think about it, just statistically speaking, in a given month, 3 days are going to be the 10% of the worst days that you have, and 3 days are going to be 10% of the best days that you have. Like in a month, like that's just realistically how it goes. And so that means 3 times a month, like you're going to have bad days.
Mm.
And that's normal. And so you just can't let those dictate what you do. Like if we make the analogy, like I can't remember the exact stats. You can probably chat GPT this and get an answer, but it's like investing in the stock market. Like if you were to look over the last 50 years, if you had pulled all your money out on certain days and you missed the 10 best days, just the 10 best days out of like 50 years, it's like half of your returns would be gone.
Cost you?
Right. And so what you have to do is you have to stay invested in your process on the bad days, even when it sucks. It's like when you go to the gym, there's some days you feel awesome and there's some days you feel terrible. And you just have to keep going and know that like those bad days are going to happen 3 days a month, 36 days a year. Like it's just normal. Like 10% of your days are just not going to be fun.
I thought for sure you were going to use a basketball analogy because I thought that a good analogy would be, I don't know if you watched the Wolves game last night. I think they shot something like 20% from three.
They are
That's
12
terrible.
out of their last 76 3-point attempts or something like that.
I mean, that's ridiculous, right? But
Regression
but
to the mean.
yeah, and if you're their coach, you're like, guys, this can't happen again. But again, to your point, you're gonna have basketball games where you shoot like crap one game, but not letting it bleed into the next game is, you're just gonna have off days. You're gonna have off nights. Even the best players in the world do, but they don't let them compound.
Psychologically, getting yourself out of that can be tough, though.
Oh, I'm sure yeah, for
And so
sure.
I think like the most helpful tool that I have ever used is just acknowledging the actual reality of just being like, okay, today's one of the 10% bad days. All right. Does that mean I'm going to change what I do? No. Hey, today is going to be one of the top 10 worst days I will ever have shooting a basketball. Am I going to stop shooting? No. Right? Hey, today is going to be one of the 10 worst sales days we're ever going to have in Macros Inc. Am I going to stop doing what I need to do? No. Like, just acknowledging the reality and then being like, well, I cannot let this change the habits I have because I still want to get to where I want to go. And just like
Do you
that
think that's
is
what
what it is.
happens? But do you think that's what happens when we talk? I think the term we're looking for, they call that tilt, right? Like when that happens, and that can be in any sport. Like, do you think it's because we get in our own heads? Like, what if you tell yourself that, but your play doesn't change? You're like, damn, like shots still aren't falling. Like I feel like I'm doing everything the same. They're just not falling. And then you get into your own head, and then it happens again. You have another bet. So then it's just like it can be tricky to get out of that, like you said. So maybe it's not. It
That's
may
where
not
the
always be as
like,
simple as.
some people hate the term trust the process
Mhm.
for
But you
valid
do.
reasons, but like you still have to do what you're supposed to do. Like
Yeah.
imagine if you had 4 games in a row where you shot bad and you switched to shooting left-handed. Like that's not going to make it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like let's say you're following your diet plan and you're exercising regularly and you have one day where the scale weight goes up and you're like, "Oh my god, this is terrible." And then you get convinced like, "Oh, like this is just a weird blip, like I don't know. Maybe it's just salt or I traveled or whatever it is." And then you're like, "The scale will be down tomorrow." Well, it doesn't come down tomorrow because maybe you like weighed yourself before you peed first thing in the morning that day. So now it's 2 days in a row. And you're like, oh my God, well, now I'm just going to switch everything on its head. It's like, no.
Yeah. Here's a question for you personally. Do you know your career 3-point percentage? Was that ever tracked for you? Do you know your stats?
Oh my God, no. I mean, I don't think
If you
they have
shoot 10, if you shoot 10 realistically on your best day, how many are you making?
in a game or just by myself.
Well, let's where it counts. You're in a game.
Like on my best days, probably 50, 60%. On my worst days, probably
Okay.
20%.
Okay.
Actually, probably on my worst days, like 0 for 10. Like there's been days that's happened.
Okay. What about free throw percentage? Where do you think you land?
Dude, I have to tell you the most embarrassing story.
I can't wait.
I'm a fairly good free throw shooter. Like I'll probably shoot if we were to do like a full season in like a men's league, probably 85 to 90%.
Yeah, it's damn solid.
I in a game have not missed back-to-back free throws in probably 20 years.
Wow.
My wife has come to one game of mine in her entire life, one men's rec league game. One.
That's exactly
I
my wife.
missed
She's been to
2
one
free
football game.
throws in a row. And she
Really?
gave me so much shit
Oh
on the
my
car
God.
ride home.
The one game that she comes to, you miss both. Holy cow. That's funny.
I think we even won by like 80 that game too. That team was so bad.
Wow.
It was so
Okay.
bad.
Before we do have a question, but I have to ask you. The best free throw shooter of all time by percentage. Do you know who it is?
Last name King. No?
Man, I'm surprised you don't know this. It's your boy. You love this guy.
Who?
You're a big fan of his.
Steph?
It is Steph. Yeah.
Okay. There was
90.8%.
who is I thought there was a guy named like Rich King or something who had like a really high
Steph Curry, it says, has had multiple seasons
Mark
shooting over
Price is who I
90.
was thinking of. Rich King, Mark Price, basically the same name.
This says, yeah, because it says other historically elite free throw shooters include Steve Nash, Mark Price, Rick Barry, and Peja Stojakovic.
I was going to say, they're both like the whitest names ever, Rich King and Mark Price.
Yeah. So we have another comment from Latanya. This is awesome. Changing the mindset and understanding loss aversion seems like it could very well be a game changer.
See, this was an hour well spent of your time. If you skip ahead of the first 30 seconds in which Dylan absolutely scarred all of us to start this episode.
I'll make sure it's I'll make sure something I put up something a little bit funnier next week. Like there's plenty of clips I can think of from the show The Office, maybe one of the greatest shows of all time that I think would really make for good cold openings. So I'll try to come up with something for you guys next week.
Do you know something special about number 4 on the all-time free throw shooting percentage list, who is Rick Barry?
No.
He shot his free throws underhanded.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Did not know that. Like, we're talking like with one hand or
granny shot?
Granny shot.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
100%.
Rick Barry free throw.
Telling you.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Wilt Chamberlain also used the underhand technique.
Huh. I wonder who the worst free throw shooter. It's got to
probably
be Shaq.
Shaq.
Yeah, it's got to be Shaq. That guy was terrible.
Let's see. Ben Wallace.
Really? Huh. I would not have thought him.
Ben wow. Wallace. So for all the people who are like Wilt Chamberlain's the greatest ever, he is the 4th worst. Andre Drummond is the 3rd worst. I was like 10 feet from Andre Drummond in person a couple years ago. Talk about the largest human being I have ever seen. Like, and I've been around some tall people, but he was just like
massive,
huge. He was so tall and so big. I was like, this is insane.
Before we go, because we got to go in a minute, but can we just shift back to the beginning of the episode? Part of it was Jurassic Park, right? How sweet would it be if we could bring back dinosaurs?
Here is my conjecture. If humanity is going to wipe itself out by doing something dumb, I really want to go like that. Like, it'd be way cooler if we made dinosaurs and they ate us all than if we like died from nuclear winter or something. Like, it would just be such a cooler story in the like just pantheon of the universe. Like, some alien civilization finds us 100 million years from now. We have this record and it's like, boom, we all died from dinosaurs. We re-engineered something that was here 100 million years ago and it ended up eating us. That would be way cooler.
That would be sweet. It's just, I know you're not a like DNA or expert with. Well, I know you have. I should say you have experience with that. But correct me if I'm wrong. But you like this would never be possible because the DNA that we have from dinosaurs is degraded for sure. Like breaks down over time. It's incomplete. We don't have a complete dinosaur genome. I don't think. Right. So and even if we had a living genome, you'd still need like a living cell. Right. So like it's just never going to happen.
So the only way that I could think that this might be possible is if we collect enough fragments of DNA
to make
from
a complete genome.
Not necessarily, but to understand certain aspects of their phenotypes, we could, in theory, then use like synthetic biology to make a genome. So, for example, like what they're doing right now is chickens have a lot of similar DNA patterns from dinosaurs, right? Because dinosaurs, the theory is like, yeah. So they're going in and they're like trying to alter the genes that are in chickens to make them more dinosaur-like.
That's crazy.
So like changing their feet structure and their wing structure and things like that. So from like what we've learned from the fragments of dinosaur DNA. So if we were to get all of it together, use a ton of computation to try to figure it out, in theory, you could maybe do that. Now, I don't think it'd be like you'd be able to completely recreate the T-Rex or anything, but it would
That'd
be
be
pretty
sweet.
cool. Yeah.
All right. Well, Nikki says, "Did you not watch the movies?" Yeah. Well, that's why
Yeah.
Brad wants to go out that way, because if
Yeah.
we are going to have an extinction level, event, like that'd be
I
a sweet way
mean,
to go.
what's a cooler story? We blew ourselves up. A comet hit us.
Or we created dinosaurs.
We boiled ourselves to death from carbon emissions, which that's a totally different story.
Mhm.
But or we re-engineered animals that lived 100 million years ago from samples in the rocks, and then they ate us. Much cooler story.
That'd be sweet. Yeah, no, I'm with you. That'd be badass. Less teeth, she says. All right. Well, what a great way to begin an episode and to end an episode. We brought it back full circle.
If anybody ever wants to know what Macros Inc. business dinners are like, this is entirely what they're like.
Yep. Well, thank you all for watching. Thank you for the comments. Got some good ones. We will be back next week to discuss bringing back dinosaurs. So I hope you guys tune into that one.
That's not true. What are we actually talking about next week?
It's a surprise. I'll let you guys know. All right.
Okay.
We're outie. Goodbye. Thank you all.